Hello, today we are going to talk about how your body is designed to function at optimal health on its own. The problem is that usually we get in the way. Things that we do in the daily basis, those things affect the way that our body functions. Like as we talked before, uh, stress affects our well-being, right? Like to the point that we can break down our own health. Um, Today we are going to talk about these kind of issues. Like we are going to talk about the hormones, our hormonal system, how benefits, how can affect. We will be talking about external hormones, and we will be talking about the different hormonal systems. Also, we will be talking about the brain and how the brain manages the whole system to rebuild your health and go back to normal. So let's start. We have our natural hormonal system, right? Okay, our own hormones. We have our brain, and we have external hormones, and we have hormonal systems. So I want to talk, before anything else, I want to talk about the brain. So what happens with the brain has this amazing quality, which is called neuroplasticity, right? Like, let's see, neuroplasticity. What neuroplasticity means? Neuroplasticity means that the brain has always the capacity to recover itself and anything else in your body. The brain always remembers how it was your body before, how your body functioned. When something doesn't work, the brain constantly repairs, renew our cells die every day, and the brain repairs the cells, repairs the damage. If we had some issues, like let's say we fell off and we have a scratch or we have a bruise, the brain knows how to heal that area specifically and sense in that area specific things. So the brain has the capacity, the same thing that happened with me. My brain broke and my brain recovered, right? It's because brain has memory. Neuroplasticity is nothing else but memory. The problem is that the brain needs to be in certain state for that, and we will be talking about that. So what happens, let's focus in this one first. What does that mean when we talk about neuroplasticity and the fact that the brain needs to have some conditions, right? Like we have to take care of our brain in a way that allows the brain to function better, right? We talk about that in the first session. When we are talking about recovering our body, recovering our health, there is one priority, and is time, right? Our brain is not Amazon Prime. You don't send the order and the next day you have it in your doorstep. That doesn't happen with the brain. The brain needs time to recover, needs time to repair. Like we have been, all the damage that we have been making, it doesn't happen from one day to another one the most of the time. It increasingly happens over time to the point that something breaks, right? So this is what happens with the brain. The brain will need some time to recover, right? Like for me, in my case, my brain broke due to a stress, but not to a stress one day, to a stress over years, right? I was in an abusive marriage for over 10 years. That piles up, right? After that, I had a really very stressful, demanding, emotionally job. That piles up. Divorce, that piles up. My dad sick with cancer. All the workload. studying, single mother of two, all of this piles up to the point that my brain said, enough is enough, and here we are, right? Recovery didn't take that long, because let's say that wasn't within a period of 15 years that happened, one thing after another one. Only took 1.5 years to have a full recovery. Of course, a little bit, before that, I could do things and I was doing better, but to have a full recovery to the point, the last thing that I remember that was more challenging, and it took longer for me to feel normal, is the fact that I felt tired. I felt tired all the time. It was hard for me to have the normal energy that I used to have and I have now. I didn't have that energy at that point. So the brain needs time to recover, because this is like the brain, you have to think that the brain is repairing those tiny cells and puts everything together throughout your body. In the brain, sends the messages through the central nervous system, and there is a whole bunch of chemistry that works in our body in our favor, but we need to give it time for all of that work out, right? So the brain wants, the first thing is time. It needs time. The second thing that the brain needs is water. In this case specifically, needs water. And the reason is because neuroplasticity, as the word says, means that the brain has to be flexible. It has to be well hydrated. It has to be well nourished, of course, and we will talk about that one too. But basically, it needs a lot of water. Water intake, it has to be something that is taken seriously. It is very important. Those two things are critical for the brain to recover what is being damaged. The other thing that the brain needs, guess what? Fats, right? The brain needs fats, and we already talked about the fats that the brain needs, but I will remind you. We need good fats, and all of them, the most of them belong to the vegetable world, right? Like avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil, olives, nuts, seeds, flaxseed oil, and then some fish oils. For example, salmon is a good fish, cod is a good fish, black cod, halibut. Those are fatty fishes that are healthy and have really good fats for our brain, and it has omegas, which it even makes easier with the neurotransmitters and neurons to function better and to make the connections, so kind of speeds up the process. As oils for the brain, fish oils for the brain, the best ones are flaxseed oil, cod liver oil, cold pressed cod liver oil, and the other one, it will be krill oil. So those are the best oils for the brain. Coconut oil is amazing. It helps a lot with recovery and in some very specific things, like, for example, Alzheimer's. We talk about that in the first session. But just, like these kind of things always help to help the brain to get back to normal and start working and functioning and being flexible and in a good shape and as healthy as we can. We have to do everything we can to have a really, really healthy brain in order to facilitate neuroplasticity to go back to help the body to function, to help the brain to function, to help everything, the whole hormonal thing, and the whole chemistry in the body to function perfectly. The brain has to work perfectly and needs these specific things. Of course, it also needs vitamins, right? B12 is the most important one for the brain. Cacao has B12. We talk about that one. It needs vitamin D, which we can find on flaxseed oil. And also we can find on krill oil. Cod liver oil also has vitamin D. Okay, so those are the vitamins, the oils. No, there is some more vitamins. Well, also the brain needs, sorry, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin C because it has plenty of antioxidants, and this is basically fruits and berries. And vitamin E is amino acids, which is what we get from good fats. Also needs magnesium. So this is some minerals, magnesium, which we also get from cacao, okay? Another thing that the brain needs for a full recovery, and it really speeds up and it makes a big, big difference if we have another color, good sleep. Okay, good night of sleep is really, really important for a speedy recovery. How many hours are necessary to have a good recovery for our brain? If you are an adult, you will need 7 to 8 hours. 8, better. 7 is okay. 6 is too little. 10 is too much. There is such a thing as too much sleep, and 10 is too much. After 8 hours, the body feels tired of being in bed. So we have to get up, okay? For the body needs to get up, and activity and movement and all of that. When it's above 8 hours, usually you get up more tired because the body is tired of being laid down, okay? So those are the things that the brain needs to work out the neuroplasticity. The other thing that the brain and the rest of the body needs is good hormonal systems and good hormonal release all the time, right? Let's talk about the hormones. Let's talk about the hormones. So, let me put this here. The direction for me is easier. So when we talk about hormones, first off, I want to talk about your own hormones, your hormones, right? We talk about the ones that are good and not so good, right? We talk about dopamine, serotonin, stamina, oxytocin. So those are the good hormones that the brain needs good release, and it will release really well if it gets everything that we have, that we talked before, right? Like the brain needs all those things, and in order to do that, the brain will release those hormones, and those hormones are in charge to make the trick for the rest of the body, right? Because the hormones, those specifically get released in our brain, but trick the body. So if we are happy, because those are the happy hormones, if we are happy, it will be much easier to recover. Another good way to do it, but when we are in a recovery process, there is not much energy. There is not all the energy to exercise, but mild exercise is important for recovery because it helps with these hormones, okay? And the exercise that we need is walk outside. Outdoors dog walking, being in nature, being outside, okay? That's is vital, because also we will get vitamin D, and that one is an important one. Remember, that one is a good one to prevent cancer, but also is very necessary to help us to be happier. So outdoors, as much as we can, okay? It really facilitates this process. And then we have the other hormones, which are not so good, right? Necessary, but not so good. In fact, those are the ones that got us in trouble, which is the stress hormones. Do you remember the stress hormones? We talk about cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. Okay, so we have the three stress hormones. Those, the happy hormones, counteract those. So the more we have these, the less this one goes down. Okay, stress hormones go down when those go up. We want to create those as many times a day as we can, as often as we can, and that will help us to keep our levels of stress down. Okay. Yeah, so when we are in a recovery process that our body, like we are recovering from something, let's just say you had a really rough week, right? Like at work. Let's not talk about piled up stress. Let's just talk about a basic week of work and daily basis stuff, kids, work, marriage, friends that don't work well, whatever it is, right? Like the regular week stuff. At the end of the week, we are tired. I mean, on Friday is not the same. We don't get the same response that we will get on Tuesday, right? Monday is a little bit tricky, but still Monday is much better than Friday response. There is more shortcomings on Friday than in the beginning of the week. So we want to make sure that through the week, this stuff is being released often, right? Because the resilience is not going to be the same. So we want to make sure that the happy hormones are released in the regular basis every day, right? And in order to do that, we need to do things that we love to do. Exercise, be with our family, have fun, have relaxed, go to nature. We talk about those, right? Yoga, exercise, all those things create a really good environment for those hormones to be released. And if we can do that every single day, on Friday, we will have much more resilience, because the stress hormones do the opposite. If there is a lot of this, those don't get released that often. Those overpower those. And on Friday, we will have a very short temper because we are very tired, because this is what those do, make your body tired. And our personality, our attitude is not going to be the same. Okay? So let's try to get as much as we can those through the day when we are in a recovery process, and when we want to get our body in the best condition ever that we can possibly have. So those are our hormones. Now, let's talk about hormones that are not ours, right? We talk about animal hormones, external hormones, usually animal, right? So we have dairy, eggs, and animal protein, animal flesh. Okay, so those things are loaded with hormones. This is loaded with hormones, and the reason is because this is a baby, is a growing baby. So that means that it has growth hormone, growth hormone interferes with all the hormones in our systems that belong to the growing baby part. Okay, so it means that for women, it will affect our reproductive system. So these affect our reproductive system. This is the case of the eggs. With dairy, we have a similar case, affects in a different area, but dairy is loaded with growth hormones too. And the reason is because dairy is meant to grow a baby, right? Like if we have dairy from a cow, from a goat, let's put the cow example because it's the most popular one. When we are drinking, I put it down, growth hormone. When we are drinking cow's milk, you have to think that that milk is loaded with growth hormones because it's meant to grow a really large baby. Like a cow, baby cow is really big, right? Like a calf is really, really big animal just to be born. And that animal is supposed to grow. And that animal uses its own mother milk, and that's dairy. When that put in a smaller being, such as us, those hormones overpower ours because those hormones are much bigger. The difference with this one is these hormones, because they belong to another system, they belong to the feeding system. Guess where they affect? Yes, exactly, your breast. Okay, so those go to your reproductive system because it's a growing baby hormones. This one is a feeding baby hormones. Both of them are growth hormones and they affect different systems, reproductive system or feeding system. In fact, dairy in women is one of the causes of breast cancer. Okay, there is many other causes, but the abuse of dairy can cause cancer, breast cancer in women mostly. Okay, then in men there is those cases of men boobs. So that's another problem. Maybe less of a problem, but it's, you know, like no man wants to have men boobs. So those growth hormones always go where they belong, right? Growth hormone, growing baby, reproductive system, because this is where they are meant to be. This is where, and this one is a much smaller baby, so the effect in our reproductive system is much less. In this one, the effect is much higher. The problem is way smaller. The problem can be very big. Okay, so those are this type of hormones. Dairy, there is small animals like goat, right? Like if we have to eat cheese, because not everybody drinks milk as an adult. Adults, we shouldn't drink milk. We are not babies. Only babies drink milk, and they drink milk from the same species. So cows will drink milk from a cow, which is their mother. When we are babies, we drink milk from our mother. As an adult, you will never think about going to your mom's nipples and suck the milk out of it, right? Because the mom doesn't have milk anymore. So that's what happens, okay? We have no reason to drink milk from another species when we are adults, because we are already growing up. And the milk is only meant to grow up a baby. That clear? Okay. Okay. So, and then we have this one, animal flesh. We are eating animal flesh all the time, right? Even though the animal is not being fed with hormones to grow, because they inject them growth hormone too, that's really wrong and very terrible. But let's say that we are buying animals that are grass-fed and they are not fed with growth hormone, they don't have antibiotics or anything else. They are organic and grass-fed and awesome flesh. This animal is still an animal. That means that this animal has its own hormonal system. Its own hormonal system. And that entitles that, yes, they have happy hormones as we do, but guess what? They have happy hormones, but they have also stress hormones. What happens with the stress hormones? They go to the muscle tissue and the fatty tissue, just like us. When we are stressed, this is where the stress hormones go. We are eating the flesh of that animal. That means that we are eating the stress hormones. And guess what? The last hormones that get released are the stress hormones in big, big amounts, because they are going to be killed, and that's a very stressful situation. Usually they get killed in massive killing places. The energy is terrible, the noises are terrible. Those animals are very, very stressed right before they get to the killing point, and they release a lot of stress hormones, a lot of cortisol. So your body, you are ingesting that flesh that is loaded with cortisol from another animal. So that cortisol is even more powerful in your body than it is in that animal body, because those stress hormones are much bigger size than ours. They overpower ours, okay? So we want to be careful with that. I'm not saying not to eat meat. I am a meat eater. I try not to eat any meat that belongs to an animal that is bigger than I am. In nature, if you pay attention, there is no animal that eats something that is bigger by itself. Right? Let's say cheetahs in the jungle, they hunt for bigger pieces, but no one of them eats one whole thing by themselves. Well, we don't eat one thing by ourselves either. So that's not a good example. Okay, scratch that one. But you don't want to eat an animal that is bigger than you are. You want to eat animals that are smaller, and your hormones are overpowering those hormones, okay? Because it really affects in your body. Animals, carnivores in the jungle, they are meant to process big amount of meats because this is all they eat. They are designed for that. We are designed for both. But if you pay attention to your teeth, in fact, your teeth are mostly herbivores. There is the canine, only two, the ones below are very not pointy. The ones on top can be pointy for some people and not so pointy for others. So it really, if you pay attention to your teeth, you will know if you are more carnivore than herbivore, okay? So let's not compare ourselves with cheetahs because it's a very different animal. Okay, I don't want to confuse you. If you have any questions, just ask me anytime, okay? So be very aware of these kind of hormones that we are ingesting in the daily basis, and often more than once a day, right? And let's say in the morning, eggs and bacon. You have different type of hormones. At lunch, some people still has pork, like let's say deli meat in a sandwich. That's pork. Pork is apparently a very, very sensitive animal, and it gets really, really stressed. And I know that one because my family has a pork farm. In fact, they have, I think they sold 2 of them, but they still have 3 farms. So they have like around, I don't know, 3,000 porks or something like that. And I don't know here, but in Europe, they have to take care of them like very, very well. So they have really big spaces. They don't have many porks together. They are very spread out. They have toys for the porks. The porks have toys to play, you know, like bite and play and all of that. They have to have food available all the time, water available all the time. There is music playing all the time, at least in my brother's farm. And the quality of life of those porks to the day that they take them to be killed is so much better. I mean, in fact, he noticed that he has less deaths over those 4 months than he ever had before, since he treats them with music and with toys and things like this. And the day that they are being released, they take them with big trucks. So the trucks have to be turned off. The noise cannot be there. They have to move them like in a small amounts, because otherwise they get really stressed with each other and they fight and they get angry and they make all those noises, and that noise stresses other porks, and apparently they have immense amounts of cortisol released in their body, and their flesh and fat is really, really bad. So we want to be careful with kind of animal we are eating. Focus in the small animals, chicken and mostly fish. Okay, and always I say always the same thing. Meat should be the side dish and vegetables the main dish. Okay, when we are eating these hormones, those are the hormonal systems that get affected for us, right? Like the breast, the feeding system, the reproductive system, and this one affects mostly our brain, because those stress hormones go straight to the fatty tissues, and the brain is what? 97% fat. Okay? So I think that's mostly it. If you have any questions, shoot me an email or ask me next class next week, and I will be more than happy to answer. Okay, and that's it. So I hope you enjoy. I hope that's been helpful. I will see you next week here. Okay, Tuesday at East Wellbeing, 5:30. Bye.